On the Isle of Islay, where the Atlantic crashes against black rock and the wind carries the voices of centuries, there is a story that lingers through the years. A story of a winter night in 1837, when the devil is said to have walked into a church with no corners, and fled through the village, into a distillery, and out across the dark waters of Loch Indal. Some say it was mass hysteria, some say it was a shadow mistaken for something darker, and some, even now, insist it was real. Tonight, we follow the trail of that legend, from the architecture that defies tradition, to the whisky warehouses where shadows linger, to the ghost ship said to still haunts the loch. Because on Islay, the past is never past, and the supernatural is never far away. Islay is a place shaped by extremes, storms that roll in from the Atlantic with no warning, summers filled with golden light, winters where darkness settles early and stays late. Its people have always lived close to the land and close to their stories. Long before Christianity arrived, Islay was a landscape of standing stones, burial cairns, fairy hills, and water spirits. The supernatural wasn't entertainment, it was explanation, a way to understand the unpredictable world around them. So when the Round Church was built in 1767, it immediately became a curiosity. A perfect circle, gleaming white, perched at the top of Bowmore's long straight street like a sentinel. Architecturally, it was inspired by Enlightenment ideals, symmetry, order, rationality. But the islanders had their own interpretation. A round church meant no corners, and no corners meant no place for the devil to hide. This belief wasn't unique to Islay. In Scottish folklore, corners were liminal spaces, places where spirits gathered, where energies pooled, where the unseen could linger. A round building was a spiritual safeguard, a place where evil had nowhere to settle. The church's interior is just as unusual. A central pulpit, pews radiating outward like spokes on a wheel, acoustics that bend sound in strange ways, whispers travel, footsteps echo unpredictably, and voices seem to come from everywhere at once. For decades, the story of the devil in the Round Church was just a bit of local humour, a playful explanation for an odd architectural choice, until the night when the devil supposedly came anyway. The winter of 1837 was bitter. Frost clung to the windows of Bowmore's cottages. The sea wind cut through the village like a blade. And inside the Round Church, the congregation gathered for evening worship. Lanterns flickered against the curved walls. The air was cold enough that breath hung in front of faces like smoke. The minister's voice echoed strangely, the circular design amplifying and distorting every word. Then, according to the oral accounts passed down through families, the minister paused mid-sermon. His voice faltered, his eyes fixed on the back of the church. There, standing perfectly still, was a figure. Descriptions vary, but certain details repeat. Tall, unnaturally tall, clothing that seemed to swallow the light, eyes that reflected like an animal's, a stillness that felt wrong, too controlled, too deliberate. Some said his feet were hooves, others said his shadow stretched across the floor like smoke. A few claimed he smiled, a thin, knowing smile. The minister dropped his Bible. A woman screamed. A child began to cry. Panic spread through the congregation. Chairs scraped, prayers turned to shouts. The figure turned and walked, calmly, out of the church. And the villagers followed, some out of fear and some out of a desperate need to know what they had seen. Bowmore's main street is long, straight and steep, a direct line from the church to the sea. On that night, lanterns bobbed down the hill as dozens of villagers pursued the dark figure. At the bottom of the street stood Bowmore Distillery, founded in 1779. Its stone walls, peat-fired kilns and cavernous warehouses made it a maze of shadows and steam. Workers inside heard the commotion before they saw the crowd. The gates were thrown open and the villagers surged in. They searched everywhere, the malt barns thick with dust, the mash house warm and echoing, the still room where copper gleamed in the lamplight, the warehouses stacked floor to ceiling with casks. The distillery at night was a place of contrasts, warm and cold, light and dark, silence and sudden noise. Perfect for hiding, or for imagining something was hiding. One worker claimed he heard footsteps on the upper gantry, footsteps that didn't match any living person. Another swore he saw a shadow slip behind a stack of casks, only to vanish when he approached. A third insisted he smelled sulphur, sharp and unmistakable. But the figure was gone. Then came the shout from the pier. "The Maid of Islay is leaving!" The Maid of Islay, a small paddle steamer, was preparing to depart with a shipment of whisky casks bound for the mainland. The villagers rushed to the waterfront, but the ship was already pulling away. According to the legend, the devil, cornered and desperate, hid inside one of the casks loaded onto the vessel. Some versions say he slipped inside moments before the villagers arrived. Others claim he transformed into smoke and drifted through the bunghole. The ship disappeared into the darkness. What happened next is the heart of the mystery. Some say the ship arrived safely and the devil escaped into the wider world. Others insist the ship never reached its destination, that it vanished somewhere on the loch, swallowed by fog or something far worse. Fishermen later claimed to hear the faint churning of a paddle wheel on still nights, long after the Maid of Islay was gone. A ghost ship, they said, searching for land, searching for a way back. Historically, there is no written record of a devil sighting in Bowmore in 1837, but that doesn't weaken the legend, it strengthens it. Islay's traditions were oral. Stories lived in kitchens, at peat fires, in fishing boats, and in the quiet moments between work and rest. A tale didn't need ink to survive, it needed belief. The Round Church's circular design does have architectural roots, but the folklore explanation, "no corners for the devil," became inseparable from its identity. Bowmore Distillery embraced the legend in the 20th century, weaving it into whisky releases, artwork and local storytelling. The tale became part of the island's cultural fabric, a blend of history, humour and something darker. But the deeper question remains: why did this story endure when so many others faded? Modern paranormal researchers have offered their own theories. Some believe the figure in the church was a shadow person, a phenomenon reported worldwide. Tall, dark silhouettes that appear in peripheral vision or moments of heightened emotion. Others point to the church's acoustics and lighting. The curved walls distort sound. Lanterns cast strange reflections. A trick of the eye could become something far more sinister in the right conditions. But there are also those who take the legend literally. They argue that the island's long history of supernatural belief, from water horses to fairy mounds, created a landscape where such an encounter was not only possible, but inevitable, and that the villagers, whether through fear or faith, drove something out of their church that night. In the end, the story of the Bowmore Devil is not just about a figure in a church, or a chase through a distillery, or a ship disappearing into the night. It is about something deeper, the way a place holds its memories, its fears, and its imagination. On Islay, the past is never silent. It lingers in the peat smoke drifting over the rooftops, in the echo of footsteps inside the round church, in the stillness of the warehouses where thousands of casks breathe in the dark. Whether the devil truly walked into Bowmore that winter night in 1837, or whether the story grew from shadows, superstition, and the human need to explain the unexplainable, the legend has become part of the island's identity. A reminder that history is not only written in books, it is carried in voices, in traditions, and in the places where people gather.